Welcome, I'm Krysta Gibson with NewSpiritJournal.com, and this is our video program called Keeping It Real. Today is the third of an 8-part series that we're doing with EagleSong Gardener, who is a 40-year teaching expert of all things herb. We're calling this series Herbs for Health, and today we're going to be learning about comfrey. Now, I don't know about you, but this is an herb I really don't know anything about. So I'm very much looking forward to learning from EagleSong. So let's head on over to her place and find out what she has to tell us about comfrey. Hi, EagleSong. So glad to see you again today.
Hey, Krysta, it's great to be here. Today we've got one of my really strong guys, comfrey.
Comfrey
This is just a beautiful comfrey I dug this morning from the garden. And, well, this is one of the herbs. In fact, I was thinking about it. If some people ask me this all the time, if you could only have one herb, which one would it be?
Really?
Yeah, and I think I would say comfrey.
Wow, because that's quite a thing to say about an herb. So tell us about it.
It is, and because it's so... it has so many applications, and it's such a useful herb, and it soothes and comforts. So many people call comfrey the comforter. And it really, really does depict the generous nature of this plant, the softness of the plant. And on the other hand, she's also an incredibly, what some folks call invasive, but I call persistent. She is a very persistent plant, and a lot of stories. We'll get to those. But for right now, I just want to show you the plant itself. This is early spring. It's April 7th today. And so she's not in her leaf stage yet. So it's a really good time to harvest for the root stage.
Okay.
Because the energy is still in the root. And you can see, again, we have these long feeder roots that help the plant to take up nutrients from the soil through the microbial interface. So it's just a fascinating thing to learn about plants. But the roots of this plant are, as you see, long. And this one was kind of laterally under the ground. I wanted to get it out as far as I could, just to show you the length of the root. So not so much deep-rooted, but big central root. This could get really large, but because I dig it often, it hasn't grown that big. But I've taken clumps out of the ground that are big like this. And so this is just an introduction. Symphytum officinale is its botanical name, comfrey. We just call this the big leaf comfrey. There's several different kinds of comfrey available. This is a purple flowered comfrey that was developed in England during World War II.
Wow. So
beautiful plant in the garden. It's tall. It gets about, I don't know, probably 5 feet tall.
Really? Okay. I see. I know nothing about comfrey, and I don't even think I've seen it before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a substantial plant.
Yeah.
Stands tall, and it's tall and erect, but it also has these big, giant leaves. So there's a real sense of, well, I call it a bioaccumulator. She pulls up so much in through her roots to feed that great top. We know there's just an energetic pattern here that's just almost never ending. And the truth is, that's why people don't like her, because she's cut and bits and pieces of her fly around. Then every place a small piece of root, and I mean small, hits the ground and gets a little moisture, it will grow a new plant. In fact, Gerard's Herbal, written in 1633, very old book about herbs, the history of plants is what he called it. He said if you chopped comfrey up and put it in a pot, it would reunite itself and become whole again. That's a pretty big thing, and I'm one of those people who says, when I hear something like that, it's like, no way. I chopped up comfrey roots, put them in pots, watched nothing happen. And then one time I was teaching topical applications at Brennecke Massage School, and I made a comfrey poultice, which I'll show you today too, and I blended it in the blender, the root.
Uh-huh.
I got home, I didn't need the poultice, and so I had a little container garden outside the back door by the kitchen, and I thought, oh, I'll just put that in the container garden as mulch.
Right.
And so went on about my business, and about 2 weeks later, I looked in there, and there was tiny little comfreys growing out of that blended up root.
Wow, that's amazing.
Bernard was right.
Yes, amazing. Yeah.
That's what comfrey does. It makes things whole again, and its name, symphytum, means like a symphony, whole.
Right, right.
So,
Wow.
so this is an amazing plant, and like I say, if I could only have one herb, I think it would be this one.
Wow, that is
So hard
something.
Because I have a lot of herb friends.
I'll bet you do.
Yeah, my friends in Canada say, "Oh, I know, that's the woman traveling with many friends."
Yes.
Right? So we're going to talk about comfrey leaf first, because the leaf is the part that is safe to use. The root has pyrrolizidine alkaloids in them, and so they're not best internally, but you can use them externally.
Okay.
So let's talk about the leaf. And this is what comfrey leaf looks like when it's harvested and dried. And the way we do it is we just cut those big, tall stalks and fold them up in such a way that they would fit into a grocery bag.
Okay.
And that's how we store it in the winter. We just have these bags labeled in our tea cupboard, and that's how we use them. So how do we make this into a healing or a nourishing herbal infusion? Again, we use our pint or our quart jar.
Okay.
1 ounce of herb, dried herb. And so this is the dried herb that's been cut.
Okay.
What they call cut and sifted.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see you need a scale.
Okay, right.
1 ounce of that and 1 ounce of this are going to look really different.
Yes. Look at that. Wow.
People, when you all start harvesting your own herbs, you're going to have a scale so you can know that you're actually getting the amount of herb into you that you need.
Right, right.
So we take this, and then I want an easy, accessible form of health building that anybody can actually access. Mm-hmm. So we have this very rigorously difficult to find equipment.
Very hard to find.
So this is all it takes. You just put your
colander.
Colander strainer into a vessel to catch, and then simply pour out the infusion. Now I put this down last night, so it's been actually steeping for about 12 hours.
And what is the liquid that you put it in?
Water.
Okay, just water. All right.
Yeah, this because water is the universal solvent.
Okay.
That's really important to understand, because when we say the universal solvent, it means this is the solvent, the menstruum, I like to call it, that actually pulls out and the nutrients and brings them into the body in a way the body can best access them. Mm-hmm. So we have the universal menstruum is water, and we're making an herbal infusion, a nourishing herbal infusion. And so squeezing out all of the moisture, so you really, because all the good stuff's in the herb still.
Right, yeah.
So and the herb has to be dry to do this. So we've now got herbal infusion, and this is consumed. If we can use that word.
I was going to say that, got it all over here.
Meant to be used. It's consumed by a quart a day.
Okay.
That's why we're going to go through 8 herbs. Some of them are not going to be used as infusions, but we'll talk about that later. But right now, this is one of the standby herbal allies, and drinking 4 cups of this every day. And we have 7 or 8 of them to choose from, so you don't get bored. Mm-hmm. And you get an incredible cross-section of nutrients available to the body.
So let me ask you, you're not saying that you drink Comfrey, a quart of that every single day. You're saying you'll be mixing these up on different days? I didn't
Yeah,
quite get that.
great question, Krista. So we have 8 different herbs that we
Right.
use in our household, and we use one a day,
Okay.
and we never mix. We
Right.
keep them simple
Right.
because I want to know for sure. So I can rotate through, we call it a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
I rotate through different herbs throughout the week. If I hit 5 out of 7 days, I'm doing great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so it becomes a practice.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear the geese?
I do. They're putting in their 2 cents worth.
Absolutely. So this is the practice of simple, nourishing infusions, nourishing herbal infusions, and think about it: a quart a day of mineral, what we call it's rich in protein. We choose herbs that are mineral rich and protein rich. That actually, this can become your third meal.
Mm-hmm.
If you ate 2 food meals, this could be considered the third meal because the nutrient density of it is there for you.
Wow.
I know. And hydration.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So a lot of people's not feeling well comes from not being hydrated.
Right. Exactly. Yes. So what
Cheers.
does it taste like? Is it bitter? Is it just
It's neutral,
okay?
and it's so kind of blah. Doesn't have good taste, doesn't have bad taste.
Just
We usually add a pinch of mint,
okay.
and today I put in 2 pieces of orange peel.
Oh, nice. Uh-huh. Okay.
So it's just a little bit of flavor. I try not to mix up the herbs when I'm doing my nourishing infusions.
Right.
I just want to blend.
Right.
But with Comfrey, because it's in that so-so kind of taste range,
Mm-hmm.
I add a little mint or a little orange peel because it actually helps me enjoy the
Right.
exercise.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're more likely to drink it if it tastes good or it's a little pleasant.
What I have found with herbal anything, if you don't use it, it can't work.
Right. Amazing how that is, huh?
It's so amazing. So what is it good for? My favorite question.
Uh-huh.
So Comfrey is really amazing. Comfrey is good for the skin. It helps the cell regeneration. And of course, skin is our first line of defense is somewhere out here,
Right.
maybe a foot from our body. But the skin is the physical first barrier.
Right.
And so Comfrey is really a great herb for nourishing and toning the skin, even by taking it internally in the infusion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really great for burns and wounds. It's known mostly as a wound healer and a bone healer. Its common name years ago was knit bone, and it would put us back together. And actually, I have a great story. My son broke his ankle. He was roughhousing with one of his friends. He was maybe 20, and he stepped into a gopher hole and fell and broke his ankle.
Ouch.
Yeah, and so he was actually employed at the time, but he couldn't walk, and he didn't have health insurance, and so he started to use dit dat jiao, which is a martial arts liniment. And he called me after about 4 days and said, "Hey, Mom, it really hurts, and is there anything I can do?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll bring you Comfrey poultices." And so he put the poultice on it, relieved the pain. About 2 weeks into it, he actually got an appointment with a doctor, and they x-rayed it, and they said, well, there would need to be surgery. But he didn't get in for another, 10 days for the surgery. And so he kept doing dit dat jiao and the Comfrey poultice, and there was pins that were going to be needed and everything. When he got into the hospital, his dad took him in. The surgeon came out and asked his dad, "What did you do?" His ankle had put itself back, not just well, but right in the right place.
Wow. Amazing.
So Walker's dad said, "Well, so what did you do?" And he told him about the poulticing and the other, and the doctor said, "Well, we just went ahead and put the pins in because we were in there." And I know, right?
No.
It's so great to have that feedback.
Yes, yes.
That was powerful enough for the doctor to come out and inquire.
Right, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And we've seen this happen time and time again with Comfrey and pain relief.
Mm-hmm.
So not only does it work well for topical pain relief, by taking it internally, it helps to build the bones
Mm-hmm.
stronger. And when your bones actually get the nutrients they need, you feel better.
Right, right, yes.
And so digestion. This is a soothing herb. It's got a lot of mucilage. That's slimy,
Mm-hmm.
and so the gooey stuff.
Right.
And so it really soothes the whole alimentary canal. Wonderful herb for that. The skeleton, the joints, ligaments, tendons, all that is, well, as Comfrey's symphytum name, made more whole,
Mm-hmm.
but also made more resilient and flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Because the proper nutrient, the bone is actually a very flexible structure. It's not as stiff and rigid as you might think.
Right. Oh, you froze up on me.
Bones,
there you are.
Ah!
Yeah, you froze up for a second, so it was like, okay.
The bones are flexible, and with good nutrient and good exercise,
Right.
the ligaments and tendons are strong, then you actually have a well-connected body.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the best ways to relieve pain that I know of.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, definitely.
Really good for the lungs.
Mm.
Again, because it's a demulcent.
Right.
Outside, the term is called emollient. That's slimy.
Mm-hmm.
Inside, it's called demulcent. And so when we take the herb internally, the demulcent quality is super good for the lungs because it helps to soothe and nourish the lung tissue so that it is also resilient and flexible. And it has the power as an expectorant to bring anything out that isn't necessary for the lung.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you get the skin, you get digestion, your skeletal integrity is improved, lungs are improved, and now there's a new organ that people are talking about called the interstitium.
Interstitium. And what is that?
Well, like we have interstitial fluid, is what goes out. It's outside the cells, and nutrients and different things, metabolic waste, travel through the interstitial fluid. Well, the interstitium is related to the fascia, and so it actually is completely throughout the entire body. And it's constantly communicating, taking messages through hormones and other means to basically keep the body self-regulated. So comfrey is a great herb to add into the rotation.
Right.
To give your body that nutrient density it needs to have all of the means, like nerves and hormones are your communicators internally.
Right.
So this comfrey is actually a great interstitium nourisher in the sense of wholeness, symphytum.
Now, you mentioned a poultice. Are you going to show us a poultice?
Oh, I was just getting ready for that.
Yeah, okay. I read your mind.
Yes, you did. So this is one of my favorite things to do with comfrey because when you need a poultice, you do not want to go in and make it.
Right.
And so we make up a bunch of poultices every spring when the comfrey leaf is up big.
Right.
And then we put them in the freezer. So this one is actually, I took it out of the freezer this morning. And what we have inside here, well, we can use our imagination here. What we have inside is comfrey leaf that was fresh, put into a blender and blended up.
Okay.
And made into a really gooey, almost looks like pudding.
Okay.
Texture. And then that pudding is put onto, these are just old dish towels, old sheets, anything you have that has a fairly lightweight cloth.
Okay.
That it's so frozen I can hardly open
it.
Right. What I would do if again, topical application.
Right, okay.
If I had sprained my wrist and this in the freezer, get it out of the freezer, put it in a pan of hot water until it got somewhat flexible, and then I can actually wrap it right around the wrist.
Okay.
And instant pain relief.
Wow, that is really good to know.
This is first aid at the top of the, It's like no waiting around. You can deal with it immediately.
Right.
And you can put it on warm or cold. I once was treating a young man with a broken bone. His arm broke right here, a very clean break. And we were doing poultices. And at first we used them cold because the inflammation.
Right.
And so one day I was walking towards him with a cold poultice, and he started backing up. And I said, "That's interesting. Why are you backing up?" And he says, "Because the cold hurts."
Oh, okay.
Okay. So now the healing has come to the point where we don't have to deal with inflammation.
Right.
We want circulation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we actually warmed the poultice up, put that on his arm, and he was fine.
Wow, that is very cool.
Isn't it cool?
Yes.
What I love about herbs is that you want whatever's going on to keep changing.
Right.
So you've got to be attentive to changing, because you can start using different herbs as the progression of healing is happening. That's why I love being an herbalist.
You froze for a moment. You said you need to stay. You were just talking about being attuned to the herbs or something, and then you froze for a moment. So I didn't quite hear everything you said.
So because we want the healing to actually move through a progression,
right?
We need to know and be observant so that we can watch that progression happen.
Right. Right.
And then we can actually change the herbs we're using.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Right.
So it's a global, the herbs work through a global system, not drugs work through a singular target.
Mm-hmm.
And the herbs work through this beautiful global patterning, which we actually, the more we use these infusions, the more our body recognizes nature's patterning.
Right. Knows what to do with it. Exactly.
And nobody knows what to do with it because the bodies of humanity have been eating plants since the beginning of time.
Right. Exactly.
So it knows what parts to take and what parts to let go.
That's right.
So it's really a beautiful art and craft, the herb work. And I especially love being given the opportunity to be a gardener herbalist.
Right.
Because I also get to learn how the plant lives in the ground.
Which I can see that's really important. That's important.
It tells me so much about how the plant will work in the body.
Right. Right. I can see that. Well, we've come to the end of our time of Comfrey today, and I want to remind everybody, and I have it on the screen, go to your website, which is EagleSong-Gardener.com, and they can learn more about you and what you do and communicate with you and all those wonderful things. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next week, where we're going to be talking about, let's see, what is next week? We're going to talk about oat straw, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's great to be with you today, Krysta. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.
Bye. Bye.